Welcome to the So That podcast, and today we get to celebrate our 50th episode, and we get to hear from Chad about what God has done through this podcast.
Hi, and welcome to Season 4 of FBC Mission's So That podcast. This is an encouraging place to hear how God is working in and around us. We know that He blesses His people so that they can bless the world around them. Why is God working in our life, church, and community? It's so that through us, the world will know that He is near.
Hey, Chad, we're here today with the 50th podcast.
Listen, we got applause.
We
50
have a live
episodes.
Audience today to celebrate
Just for
our
today.
50th podcast.
We have the studio is full
or a
of
nice
clapping
button
people. They also have a laughing button. We got lots of things going on there. Well, hello, Amanda.
Hello.
How are you?
You've made it. We've made it.
50 episodes. That's really quite amazing. I don't think I ever would have thought we would do that, especially in just over a year. So that's a lot of recording.
It's impressive. I mean, you started with you and Sadie doing a lot of
I
podcasts.
know.
You have a lot of interviews. You got a lot of good just teaching and understanding of what missions is. So
yeah,
it's been very fun.
It has been fun. I've enjoyed every moment of it, and Sadie is amazing. So there's been so much fun. We've had a lot of people through the podcast this first year, and there's so much more to do.
And we're glad to do this, to spread the news of what the church is doing and what missions is doing. So, Chad, tell us, why did you even start this podcast?
Yeah, so I've been a missions pastor for more than 20 years, missionary and missions pastor, in kind of lots of different places. And one of the biggest challenges always is trying to tell stories. I've said this a time or two, where you get a team of 20 or 30 people to go on a mission trip, and you come home and you get 2 to 3 minutes to tell a story on the stage or a video, and you're thinking, man, there's like 35 people that had a whole 1 week or 2 week experience, and they want to come back and talk about it, and there's just no space for it.
Yeah,
so,
and they can share with their friends, but they can't share with the church that's sent them.
Yeah, and they feel like it's a big story. Mm-hmm. And so, that's kind of the big version, but the small version is that there's things happening in the life of our church all the time that we wish people could hear about, know about. And there's really no capacity for it in large group gatherings. So maybe their small groups will listen, or maybe the Sunday school classes will listen, like you said, friend groups. But this gives us an opportunity for them to pass it around to everybody, So a quick interview. We try to keep these things around 30 minutes. If you've been listening to them, they go beyond that often.
You got a lot to say.
But everyone has a lot to say. Like, I don't know if I can say for 30 minutes, and we go 45 minutes. And gosh, yeah. It goes by so quick. And it's just really a media opportunity for us to share really unbridled stories. People can tell stories all day long. So we've had a chance to interview some of our members and some missionary partners that come through from our local partners or domestic partners that live in our area as well. And so just a good way to help people, let people hear. Here's the thing is you can get like 10 people maybe listen to it, right? Or 5 people or 50 people. You don't really know.
You don't know.
And so one of the really fun things is that there's been people listening, and that also makes it really exciting when people come and they're talking about how much they enjoy listening to it and that kind of thing. So
and the interviewees, they've all come and they've sat here and, like you said, been like, I don't know what to say, and they say a lot, but they're always very thankful to have been able to tell their story or ministry they're a part of, or what gives them passion. They really enjoy being able to sit down with us and talk, because it's like I get this opportunity where otherwise, even if our listeners know how many downloads, we know how many downloads and things, but there's people also just listening, and they get the opportunity to share what's going on in their lives.
Yeah, and there's really so many ways to make this even more. For instance, if we need help. By the way, if you're a listener and you really want to help us, let me know, because we need. If somebody would do like any kind of social media campaign to try to get some of the episodes highlighted. So, we've had a few of our guests have been so excited about that they email it out, the link to all of their friends, and,
That's right.
And you can see all of a sudden there's one.
You see
this one episode
downloads.
goes up to 90 people have listened to it in the first week, and you're like, okay, this is crazy, but it's really fun because you can do so much with this, so much. Mm-hmm. So even as we're documenting the story, we're also creating an archive, right? An archive of different activities of our church that could be listened to or referred to later on. So as we get our domestic partners to come in and talk to us about, we had the leadership from Pregnancy Care Center. as Donna came in, she could put that on her website. She could tell people, hey, if you want to hear more about how we interact with local churches, here's an interview we did with a local church, and on and on and on that goes.
Right. So win-win for everybody.
It's just fun for everybody. I mean, it takes time, and that's the challenge.
They got to come in and put on cool headphones and
you get to sit in
really
a
nice microphone.
state-of-the-art studio and have a great time. So 50 episodes. It's a fun thing to celebrate today, and I'm excited to just talk with you a little bit, Amanda, as well. So yeah, what are we doing today?
Okay, I also want to know, some people maybe just start listening, or you've been here for 18 months. So what I want to know about you, like a little bit. You interview tons of people, and you might have said this on the first episodes, but how did you even become a missions pastor?
Oh man, well, that's those are fun questions all the time, and you're right. We do interview everybody, and so you just get to be the facilitator of the conversations.
I do.
But no, for me it was really from the beginning. I became a believer at a little Trinity church camp in the Arkansas hills. It was called Rock Haven Bible Camp. I don't even know if it's still around. And the city was Hasty, Arkansas, and my dad sent me kind of on a whim. He met a guy. We were not a believing family at the time. He met a dude that was sending his son to the camp, and so he's like, "Hey, I'm going to send you to camp." And I'm like, "I don't even know what that is, but sure, let's go."
Question: Did they have air conditioning?
No, there was no air conditioning, and I think it was like a July.
At one point,
it was like 1991 or 2. I can't remember exactly the date, and I wrote it down somewhere so I could find it. But at the camp, this missionary stood up and started talking about how God changed lives in Africa. And, it was like your old school missions presentation. He had spears, and I'm pretty sure he had like the old, the picture slides, not like PowerPoint slides, like the picture slides,
Oh,
so
wow.
Click,
so you
click.
Insert it.
Yeah, you hear the little thing turn and it click, and the picture pops up, and you're like, this is it wasn't black and white, but it wasn't
super clear.
It wasn't 4K, that's for sure. And he started talking about this God that could change lives in Africa, and I thought maybe if God changes lives there, He could change lives here. Mm-hmm. And so that's the day that I gave my heart, my life to Jesus, and really immediately everything began to change. Crazy is while I was at camp that week, my dad became a believer in a different location. He went and visited a church. He gave his life to Christ, and then our family began to make pretty massive changes. Later that summer, we both got baptized together in the Buffalo National River, which is a beautiful river in northern Arkansas. And our family began to change. I mean, I always say we were still extremely messy. We probably still are, but just things were a little different after that. For me, it was very different. So just from the beginning, there was this mission tent. And we went to this church in Arkansas that when I was 12, they started taking teams to Mexico. And so they invited me to be a part of it. My dad didn't go. It's crazy. I was too young to go. I'm not sure why they let me go, but I got to go. And we went 2 years in a row. And again, it just impacted me. I was in another country with a bunch of kids from Arkansas, and we saw poverty on a level that was much, much stronger than anything we'd seen. And if you've ever been to Arkansas, there's poverty in Arkansas. A lot of it's one of the poorest states in the United States, and so it was just that was huge. So just fast forward, I would join the Army, went to Bible college, and every time I had an opportunity to travel or see the world or to be involved with what God was doing elsewhere, it was always exciting. So when I got hired at North Lake Christian Church, and outside of Seattle, in Everett, they hired me to be their junior high youth pastor and missions pastor, and it was perfect. So I started taking teams all over the world then. And
would you take the kids with you on these teams, these little trips?
Yeah. Most of them were youth oriented trips. So like a youth pastor and missions pastor, we partnered with some groups like YWAM or others that were really youth oriented, and had a great time. I would tell you, looking back on it, that we learned and did amazing things, but like it was very much entry level. We had no idea whether we were causing more problems than we were helping with. There was no wisdom in what we were doing. It was just let's go and do, all passion and energy, not a lot of wisdom. And then you kind of grow. So I came across this perspectives thing, right? And it began to just really shake me up. And I started to learn that there's actually incredible strategy that has been kind of developed for missions over the years. So that's kind of the whole thing. I started as a missions pastor in 2003, and I've been doing it ever since. So I absolutely love it. It's by far the best part. It's like, I feel like it's the big vision for all churches, for the church, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's the reason why churches say they exist, is to make Jesus known, here and everywhere, kind of statements, right? It's at the core of everybody's purpose statements.
Yeah.
And so I get to talk about the big things happening all the time. It's really fun. If you get into the little tiny details, but this is the big picture. It's really cool. It's just keeping the big picture in front of the church.
Yeah, you can tell. I've only been a few episodes with you and listened to a bunch, but you clearly have like this desire, this passion for missions, and this passion to communicate it clearly and to kind of bring missions and the church body together and not just these two separate isolated things. So what about missions excites you the most, or communicating that to others excites you the most?
Well, there's so much. And missions is broad, right? Sure. You can talk about the unreached, the places where the gospel's never been, and how you get the gospel to those people. And you can talk about everything in between, right? Like a Boerne, where I feel like our likelihood that everyone in Boerne hears the gospel at least once a year is probably fairly high. Maybe there's some exceptions, but like you've got a lot of ministries focused on a fairly moderate population, 20,000-ish people. And so the gospel is at least championed in this community very well. You put those two things against each other. Your places the gospel has never been. People live and die never hearing the name of Jesus. Than somewhere like Boerne, where you might hear it all the time and be irritated that someone else is going to talk to you about Jesus again. But within the scope of that, I found this word that just redefined all of it for me, and the word is mobilizer. I had never heard the word before, but it fits me to the T, and it's defined by the people who don't go overseas so that they can send more people here, right? Like it's to champion the need, the cause, to champion the heart behind it. It's to champion the commands of Jesus that should result in our action, all those kind of things. So it's a discipleship function, but it's taking knowledge and putting feet to them, right? It's this mobilizer word. Historically, the word mobilizer was trying to get resources to the army when they really needed it, right? It's trying to mobilize people so that they can better pursue the mission. So you see all the pictures of the ladies in factories, from World War II, when they're like, the men are all at war and now they need women to work. And that was kind of this word mobilizer. How do you get people to live differently so that they can pursue what the mission was, the Army mission?
Right.
But I love this new tweak of the word that is the mission mobilizer, trying to engage the body of Christ for the work of Jesus around the world. So I love it. It's my favorite part by far, and so. Oh,
that's really fun.
Yeah.
I think you do a great job at that.
Well, thank you.
You really do. I feel like sitting here and talking about all the things. You do have like this brain full of understanding of, missions, like you said, for just the language and for the unreached, but also the whole scope. You have the language and the smarts all in there. So,
thank you.
Yes.
I do love it. So First
clear.
Baptist has been a wonderful environment for me the last year and a half, and I got to tell you, there's these doubtful moments, like in the interview process. I'm talking to some amazing people that are here at the church, and they're talking about all that FBC has done in the past. And there's moments like, do I really have anything to offer? Do I have do they even need this? Because they're already doing so much, And
they need a mobilizer. They need someone to put those pieces together.
Well, you think they have all these things already. What am I going to, and even perspectives, we're getting ready to host the class here. It takes a ton of work. It's a huge undertaking administratively. And you just wonder, maybe they already know these things. So we take the class and you just wonder, is it going to impact a community like this one? And now a year and a half in, I could say with great, great confidence, yes, my role here has had an impact, and it does encourage. It fans a flame that was already burning, but now the flame is raging. You know what I mean? Like it's growing, and that's exciting.
That's really fun.
And perspectives. It just impacted these people who are, how we call them, already like superstar believers. They're already fully engaged with their heart, and now they're gaining wisdom, and they're like, this is so good. It's so good, and so it's so exciting to be a part of and to get to do it. So
I love that
word mobilizer redefined my whole whole understanding of my role
kind of
in
like
missions.
An identity of what you have going for you. That's really cool.
Yeah, there are these times you get on a mission trip and you land. This happened to me for probably the first decade of doing this work. Is I would land in a new country, and be like, "Is this where you want me to land, Lord? Like, is this the place you're calling me to?" And then again, you learn the word mobilize. Like, oh no, God's called me to do this other thing, and that's okay. It's okay. You don't have to go to the ends of the earth.
Yeah.
You can stay here and impact the earth from here. So that's pretty cool stuff.
I love that. I know that. I'm new to you've had to educate me quite a bit on exactly what missions is and what's it look like. And, but one thing I know that you've done for the church is the boxes at Easter or before Easter, and, really trying to engage the church body sitting at the pews to do kind of exactly what you're passionate about.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have any fun stories to share what that has looked like, but what are some other things that you've done at FBC that maybe some people don't know that you have been kind of a hand in, or like you said, or jumped on board to things that were already going forward that you're kind of proud of, that have the FBC has done with missions that you're proud of or excited about?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's a lot, and it's super encouraging. And again, that's kind of what this podcast is designed to. And when you listen to the podcast, some of the interviews are to highlight some of our partnerships, right?
Yeah.
Some of the things that we're most proud of, and there's a number of others that we just haven't been able to line up our schedule. So we have more coming. But for me, there's a few things that maybe nobody would know about that in my heart speak volumes. It's like, again, like, what are you doing, Chad? You just rah cheerleader for missions. What am I doing?
We need one of those.
You do, but there's probably better cheerleaders in this world than me. And so there's a couple things that I'd say kind of sit quietly in the corner that mean so much to me. One of them is right when I got here, November 22. We had a missionary family that was preparing to return to the mission field. But when I met with them for the first time, and I'm a nobody to them. They don't know me. I haven't invested in them. I've not discipled them. I'm a nobody. I'm just the new missions guy, And so we sat down, and in our first conversation, they began talking about some of their major reservations for the place they're about to go. And there was so many of these, I would call them red flags, that pop up. Like, these are big issues. And so I said to them, are you sure that this is the right place for you guys? Like, as I'm listening to you and I'm hearing you talk about these things, this is our very first conversation. And they just started like almost crying. Like, we feel like we have to do this. We've already told our supporters, this is what our agency expects. And I said, guys, you don't want to be there for another 5 years if you already know it's going to be bad. And they're like, yeah, we need to. And then they went through major change. So they went back to their leadership. They said, we really feel like this is not going to be a great fit. They were all the way, like, they were a few weeks from leaving, and they made all these changes. And then I'm like, there's this risky feeling, like, I don't know if I just wreck these people's world. I hope that this is going to be good for them. And they ended up staying home for an extra 6 months as they kind of redefined what they were going to do. And then they went to the field. And they went to a new place, one that they really felt was exciting for them, felt like this is really the core of who we are, where we want to be, what we want to be doing. And now they've been there for almost a year. And I had a conversation with them just the other day, and they're thriving. They're thriving. Mm-hmm. And in my heart, there's nobody knows of any of those little things, maybe a couple of the leaders. But that's not something you talk about from the stage. It's not something, and yet that little bit. So I got to counsel with them now over that 6 months before they left, and then I got to just continue. Now I'm supporting them, and we are very close. It's amazing how God is using them, and they, to me, it's like, this is, again, like this is one of the reasons I'm here. There's several others. Some young people who are going on mission trips. They were going to go long term. We started talking, and then they started thinking, oh, maybe they need to make some adjustments to their plans, and so over and over and over again, there's this other layer of, I would call it, like, maybe more intensive missions engagement, missions counseling for our missionary partners and potential partners that continues to bear fruit as well. And it's behind the scenes, but it's so life giving because now you can see people make subtle shifts, but the shifts are really strategic and really good for each one so far. There's probably going to be a mistake at some point, but so far.
But the Lord will be there.
The Lord has blessed us,
yes.
and we've seen such good things behind the scenes, in the small places, in the quiet places as well. I'll give one more story. There was a family that came to our church who had just come off of the mission field, and they had a really rough interaction in their year plus serving overseas. So they came back pretty wounded and frustrated. And there's an element that if you're a missionary and you go overseas and you're gonna just spend, you think about it, you've given up your life, you've sold your things, you've raised the money, and now you're overseas and things go poorly. And you feel frustrated, the leadership there treats you in some way, maybe you find that there's still sinful people in the missions world. You're like, what? I'm supposed to be here serving God, and it doesn't go well. You come home, and there's an element to that really hurts the core of your heart and faith, because you're like, why do we do all this?
Why, Lord? What
God,
is that
were you
for?
even there?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Like, I did all of this for you. I expected you to at least meet me in the middle. And they come back wounded and broken. And sometimes they even question whether they even believe that God, if he's not faithful in this, maybe he's not faithful at all, is what their heart tells them. And so there was a couple that came in that just kind of had this, they were just wounded. And now the last year I've got to just spend time walking with them, just seeing what they're doing, and God is just blessing them. They took perspectives as well. It gave them like a lot of really good tools to kind of reprocess their experience and kind of identify there's some areas here that we didn't know going into it, we should have recognized. And so again, you're just helping people grow. And I heard someone say discipleship is helping believers interpret the world around them and responding in a godly way. And I feel like that's kind of what you're doing. You're just kind of walking through with people from a wide scope of experience. You throw in all the international stuff, it gets even crazier. And just help them to interpret it through Christian eyes, through godly eyes, through patient eyes, through wise wisdom eyes, and really just trying to interpret it in a way that helps them see God in it, if it makes sense. So but those are things that nobody would see. And again,
I love that.
They don't
and
go
I
into
love that
magazines.
You were here for that. Yeah.
Me too. If it all fell apart and that's all I did, I would still feel really good about those few little things. Those are the things that make this is God working. Again, those are the things no one would ever see or know or talk about. So,
and it's nice that because someone could, like, I could come along and be like, oh, God loves you, or try to say some encouraging things that might be helpful or not. But the fact that you understand where they're coming from and know what's going on and know words or all the stuff that you're able to actually physically help them and guide them and understand what they're going through. Because a lot of people can try to understand, but you actually know. And I think that's helpful for these missionaries that we want to send out that come home, or, what is it called when they go on, they take a leave, or...
Yeah, home assignment. It used to be called deputation, which that word doesn't get used anymore.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
But they can come back and find encouragement before they go back out again, and they can land here. They want to land here and be supported here. And you do a great job to do that for our actual missionaries out there internationally, and I'm sure in the community as well.
Well, we're sure trying. There's so much going on that there's plenty to criticize as well. We need to do better. But
this is the 50th, so we're just going to sign about everything.
Everything's wonderful.
Yes.
No, one of the great things, again, maybe in the last year and a half too, is we created capacity within our missions structure here at FBC. So before we had two teams that were about 11 or 12 people. And they have unbelievable scope of work, the international side and the domestic side, trying to care for and develop vision for, tell stories for. It's just a lot. So this year we created one committee with 5 different teams around it. And now we have about 25 people that are involved, and it's just starting to share that load. So everybody capacity goes up, the more people that get involved, especially the more wise people that get involved, right? They have some idea of what they're working on and so some expertise in the areas. And so it's getting better and better. And I think that'll continue to grow. We're going to probably add another team soon, a prayer team that just tries to communicate prayer prompts to our church constantly for our mission partnerships and things that are happening within our
so what exactly
world.
Does that team do? So they're one big team, and what do they do?
So the Missions and Evangelism Committee is 6 people, and each of the team leaders from those 5 teams sit on the committee. So the committee is the one that has the responsibility to develop and approve budgets and expenditures, all those kind of things. It's got the fiscal responsibility stays with the committee, but the teams each represent their area of influence. So one of them is the international team. So they're working with all of our international partnerships, our foreign mission trips. They'll be working to develop it's the largest part of our budget goes to the international side. The domestic side is like the easy second large. It's 22 partners. It's a lot of work. And every month we receive requests for new partnerships. FBC is on everyone's list of a place that you can go and get financial help for your ministry. So startups, new ones, old ones that we used to partner with that we haven't partnered with now, they're all consistently and constantly looking for ways to build a connection with us. So that team is supposed to manage and care for our partners and also vet and develop new partnerships when we have capacity for it. Then we have the communications team. It's trying to just do this, tell stories. We've developed a couple large publications each year, one focused internationally, one focused domestically. One day I hope that they'll help us develop next steps for the podcast. I don't know that I'll stop doing this, but it'd be great to have other people involved, especially in the production and other planning and strategy. What would be the best next interviews we do? It'd be a great conversation to have with somebody other than just me and Amanda. And so hopefully that'll grow. But beyond that, we have that mobilization team that's really looking at trying to, what's our next step for our congregation? How do we help our congregation as a whole grow in their capacity? So events like Perspectives, or last week we did the Gospel Conversations training. In the past, we've done some things like When Helping Hurts seminars. All those kind of things would be part of the planning and development of that mobilization team, trying to figure out what's the next step for our congregation and how do we help people grow in their own capacity. And then the newest and probably most exciting one is the Business as Mission team. We're trying to create a space for business practitioners in our church to understand the growing kind of whole industry within missions, that is starting businesses to fund missions or starting businesses that will be it's kind of the platform for missions. Every country in the world, whether it's closed or not, wants businesses. They want successful businesses that provide livelihood.
And that's how you can come in as a missionary, right? You own a business. And
lots and lots of businesses can be started in some of these closed countries by American leaders, American workers. They want American dollars. But there was a season where there's best practices and poor practices, sure. Right? There are some businesses that masquerade, or missions that masquerade as business, and that typically ends up getting in trouble because they don't make a profit. They don't actually benefit economically the country that they're working in. And so you have to be able to do both. You have to be able to be
smart about that.
You have to be smart. Mm-hmm. You have to be a successful business, which is a challenge. Most missionaries are not trained businessmen. So just trying to get missionaries to become businessmen is not a great plan. You typically have to get businessmen who have a good idea, work together with some missionaries, and you form a team. And that then helps to create where you can do good and make some money.
Wow, what a strategy.
So there's so much of this kind of stuff. So the Business Mission team is new. We're just starting. Cool. There's 5 of them, just trying to think. We believe that our church and our community here has exceptional business capacity and leadership. So we're trying to figure out how do we capture that and then focus it on how we can apply business principle or business opportunities for the mission field. So there's some really cool things there. And so that's what the committee is only 6, but the teams altogether represent about 25 people. And so you've got people focused in these different areas. Like I said, we're probably going to add a prayer team, which would make our committee add another person, a team leader. And that one just really wants to try to help our church engage with how do we bring and know, how do we knowledgeably approach the throne of God and speak to and ask the Lord, petition him for these different requests and different needs along the way. When, again, if communication is such a challenge that we have to do, and we're working on all these different platforms to try to get the information out, then a prayer focus would be the easy, simple next step. So it's really exciting to see the capacity of our missions growing as well.
Wow, that seems like a a fun team, well organized. I bet there's some cool people on that team.
We're trying to be. It's limited by the leaders' organization, which is not substantial, but we've got some help. And
the guys that have other jobs and things to do that want to come and help.
Well,
men and women.
You've got the big picture guy at the top saying, "This is great, let's do this." But then sometimes the nuts and bolts of it need some.
That's
some
why
focus.
It's the body, the church.
It is.
That's
exactly. We actually, I said this Sunday in my sermon, like we need everybody doing their part. Yep. Like it's going to take the whole body to do the work that God's called us to do.
Yes. I wanted to say that today was, being the 50th podcast with Chad, that you need to listen to his sermon on last Sunday. I don't know the date. It was May.
Mm-hmm. I think it was the 26th.
Great. May 26th. You want to go
Sunday,
listen
May 26th.
to Chad talk about legacy. And it was really fun, Chad. I think I told you this a little bit, but so in our growth group, we meet a growth group after your sermon, after the Sunday sermon. And the question to our growth group was, what kind of legacy does FBC have? And there were lots of great things, but the first thing that came out was missions. And so there's this understanding that missions is important to FBC. They were talking about how missions, there's so many different people within our church that we've been able to interview that do some things. They know that there's lots of international things y'all do. There's some family ones, there's kids, there's adults. And so there's this underlying understanding that FBC's legacy is missions. And so, but like you said, it's like, how do you get those stories out there? How do we know by word of mouth that this is so important to FBC? And so it's fun to hear from the church that we know that it is missions. And so you're doing a great job with this and all the other things, even if you don't get a whole Sunday to talk about it, but it's there, and people of the church know that it's important. And I think it's the people in the church have done a great job, but leading that and wanting it to be in the forefront has been apparent. So it's really fun that that's FBC's legacy is missions.
Well, and it's an old legacy, right? It's a 125, 26-year-old church.
Yeah.
And it far preceded me,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's not like this is Chad's thing. I get to build on foundations that were well laid way before I got here. Mm-hmm. and really it gives you so much strength, right? You're so much what we have at FBC is such a blessing, whether it's the resources or the people resource, the understanding and history that we're working with. This class we did, the perspectives class we did in the spring, I've probably led 6 or 7 classes over the years. And like I said, they're enormous. The undertaking is huge. So that may not sound like a lot, but that's a lot. And
I believe it.
And many of them, there's always major impacts. So that's always really, but this one was something special. Like, again, you had such high caliber people jumping into the class, enough that I wasn't sure it was going to make an impact on them at all. And then they interacted with this rich content that really was new and challenging and surprising. And then as it's starting to like embed, as they're working through it, and you're going to see how their lives, it's unbelievable. It's one of the highlights of my missions career is right now watching these impacts for people who are, again, devoted, amazing followers of God, and excited to see what God's going to do through them as it grows. And so it's super exciting for me. And yeah,
I love that.
50th episode is just fun. Like, it's all these stories.
In 50 episodes, you have about 43 interviews. So that's 43 times that someone has come in here and told their story about how, the gospel has changed them and other people, and, maybe the ministry they're a part of, or they started, so that's really fun. And there are, of those 43, 18 of those are from our church, which is really cool. They're members that sit in the pew that have started something in missions or has been a part of something. Because like you said, there's a lot in Boerne and the San Antonio area. A lot of these people, we've got people international that we've been able to like physically interview from Moldova and Uganda and Southeast Asia and North Africa. I mean, these people sat in these places and were able to chat with us about what God is doing in their lives and in their countries.
And some of those stories are just phenomenal. They're incredible. And you listen to them and you're like, oh my gosh, there's so much.
Sorry that there's a time limit. I don't want it.
Right? There's some of these are just fantastic. And so, yeah, that's so exciting.
I know. And you have, like you've talked about perspectives, but that's been a really cool part to see that this huge class that is really, you will hear in these interviews, have really changed people's perspectives. And, and how you can listen to these podcasts and get like a little glimpse. And I've listened to a few of them, and I'm amazed at the people that you're interviewing who have come to Boerne to want to talk about what the Lord is doing in the lives of people all over the world or in their hometowns and things. It's amazing that they came to Boerne and wanted to share it.
Yeah, our instructor base for this class was incredible.
It's stout,
and it really was wonderful. And all of the instructors were excellent. And so, yeah, that's wonderful. My last church, I had this idea, the podcasting idea. So we put together a podcast, and I think we recorded 10 or 12 episodes. And after like 6 months of those episodes, I think we had like 50 people had 50 downloads. 50 people had downloaded. Like, this just does not make an impact.
Maybe you're just ahead of your time.
I probably listened. I was probably 20 of the 50. Was me just trying to see if just making sure it was working okay or something. And so this has been a ton of fun. It really has been. You should
be encouraged. And, you've put a lot of effort into it. Yeah, there's like some more stats. There's 1,700 downloads, and that doesn't even include the listens. I don't know if I download. I just click to listen. I don't know what it does, but that's a lot, and that's pretty fun to see these stories going out there. Someone's listening, and
it's funny because month to month the listening keeps going up. I guess the more episodes you have, the more people are listening to all of them simultaneously.
There's some algorithm out there.
It's just wild. So just in the last month, there's been almost 600 of them in the last 90 days. In the last month, there's over 250. And I'll just tell this. This is a corny story. I went to a meeting with a missions organization probably 5 months ago, and I'm meeting with a group of different missions pastors. Several of them I never met before. One of them was First Baptist San Antonio. If you're listening, Byron, I'm telling your story. And he said, "Hey, I recognize your voice from the podcast." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Yeah, you do that podcast, the FBC Boerne, right? Are you Chad?" And I'm like, "Oh my goodness!" Like,
you're famous.
You never think that people are listening to this outside of the sphere that you're intending it for.
Yeah.
And I'm sure my face turned red because I thought, oh, all of a sudden I'm trying to think through the hundreds of things I've said in this podcast, and I hurt anybody's feelings. But he said it's been really encouraging for them, and he likes to listen to it because he's trying to figure out what other churches are doing. And so, you never know what it's going to do. And so that was a fun moment to think, oh goodness, this really could be listened to by anyone, anywhere. That's a challenging thing to think about.
And really neat.
And pretty neat. Yes. And so,
well, Amanda, as we wrap up our 50th podcast, I want to know what's going on this summer. I know that as a church member, that there's a lot of summer missions trips going on. And what does the rest of the year look like for the podcast this summer?
Yeah, so here we are halfway through 2024. Halfway. It seems so fast. We're like 2 days from June.
Wow.
And we've got a lot planned. There's a lot coming up. So the biggest thing is we've got a couple of big mission trips. We've got 35 people going to Mexico in a few weeks. We have 15 people going to Turkey, Moldova, just next week.
You guys
next Monday.
being one of them.
Yeah. Our family being one of them. We're super excited about that. So we'll do some bonus episodes in the summer where we just try to do some testimonies from our trips and what people took away from it.
Those are awesome.
And so there'll be probably 5 or 6 or 7 of those that we'll record in the summer. In the fall, we'll definitely launch a new season, season 5. We're trying to do these by semester. And so we'll have another one starting in the fall. Really excited about that one as well. We'll continue doing kind of what we're doing, where we just try to find some stories from within the congregation. We'll try to find some local partners or domestic partners that can come and talk about their ministries. If you know of stories, they don't have to be just FBC stories. Like there's these networks that FBC is partnered with, so they can kind of go really far. We've talked about maybe MOPS. We mentioned this idea of family on mission.
It is now MomCo.
It's now MomCo.
Yeah, Mom Community.
So there's big change there.
Yes.
It's going to be hard to change that in our hearts and minds. It's been MOPS for so long.
It's no longer a cleaning supply.
It's no longer something you clean your floor with. So MomCo, we'll try to get some interviews with those guys and see how some of these different networks we're embedded with how they pursue kingdom advancement within their own work. So lots of great stuff coming up. We're really excited to see what's going to happen. And,
yes.
And we have a few more really good interviews too. We keep finding in our church just unbelievable people, and so look forward. We have several different episodes we're releasing week by week in the next couple months, and so I hope you enjoy those as well.
Yeah. Well, happy 50th podcast, Chad.
Thanks. Yay! Hey, look at that. We've got more cheering. Amanda, thank you for all that you're doing. For those of you listening, we pray that and hope that this is a value for you, that it's encouraging and exciting to hear how God is using FBC and many others for his kingdom. Remember why? It's because that we know that God has blessed us so that we can be a blessing to others. So be a blessing wherever you go today. If you're excited about our 50th podcast, send us a note. Tell us how this has impacted you. We'd love to hear about it. Maybe we'll even share it on a podcast in the future. Have a wonderful day, and God bless. We are so thankful that you joined our podcast today. We would love to hear any feedback you may have for us. Remember, Psalm 67 says, "May God be gracious to us and bless us, and make his face shine on us, so that your ways may be known on earth and your salvation among all nations." Don't forget why the Lord blesses us. It's so that we can be a blessing to those around us. Until next time, God bless.